Okay, so this last thing from the basic rules of chess, just some general stuff. Won't need a board for any of these before we start to look at basic strategy. Just some basic rules, some general things that you need to get right, so nobody accuses you of cheating if you're ever in a tournament. Hopefully it'll avoid any arguments. So the first thing that you really must get into the habit of doing is called touch move. And basically in chess, if you touch one of your pieces, you must move it. So all the thinking should take place in your head. If you touch one of your pieces and it has a legal move, you must make one of those legal moves. Similarly, if you pick a piece up and put it down on a square, you can't suddenly go and change your mind and pick it up and put it somewhere else. So once you've touched it, you must move it. And once you've let it go, you have to put it on that square. The only exception would be if the move you've tried to make, is illegal in some way, so it puts your king in check or whatever, and then your opponent will be able to tell you to play something else, although you should still move the piece that you've touched if some other move with it is legal. So in short, don't touch your pieces until you're ready to move them. Similarly, if you touch an enemy piece, you must then capture it if you can. If you have a way to capture it, you must do so. So again, don't touch the pieces until you're ready to make your move. A lot of chess coaches say to their junior players, just play, but sit on your hands while you're playing, which sounds really silly, but actually it just stops them playing moves too quickly. It gives you a couple of seconds of thinking time just to sort of get your hand out to play the move if you're sat on your hands. Fine. The one exception that you might want to move a piece just to put it more centrally on its square, perhaps it's been nudged and it's not quite right on its square, and you're allowed to do that, but you have to then announce that you're going to move a piece, adjust a piece before you do, and you just say I adjust, or j'adoube is an old-fashioned way of doing it. It's the French for I'm adjusting, and then you're allowed to just move that piece on its square so that it's more central or pointing the right way, or if you whatever you go. Okay, so that's fine. So if you need to adjust a piece, just announce that you're going to do it. So touch move. I resign. Any time you decide a game is hopeless, you are allowed to gently place your king on its side and surrender, and it's called resigning. Your opponent cannot force you to play on. If you've decided that you're just being thrashed, that the game has gone wrong, it's lost beyond hope, then you don't have to play it on to the end. Generally, with beginners, it's not a bad idea to carry on, because you never know when the opponent won't know the difference between checkmate and stalemate, or they might accidentally blunder their queen back. But it's why checkmate at higher level tournament chess is very, very rare, because stronger players just know when the game is lost with no hope of getting it back, and they tend to just say, yeah, okay, that's fine, I quit, I resign. Only thing I would say is try not to resign too early. If you still have enough pieces that you can create some complications in the position, then it's probably not a bad idea to play a few more moves, because people do get a little bit careless and blunder occasionally. Especially, say, while we're playing at quite a junior level, it's a good idea to keep going. But you don't have to. You can resign. Similarly, if a position is completely and utterly drawn, or you and your opponent feel that it might be, you are allowed to offer a draw to your opponent at any point. So you have one of those, you say you've got a king and a rook against a king and a rook, and you're just shuffling around the board. Nobody's going to blunder their rook away. Would you like a draw? And the opponent will tend to say yes. And if you're in a tournament, you'll get half a point each. So you split the win. You'll find that some players will offer a draw when they think they're slightly losing in a position, just to see if they can get away with it. And of course, the opponent that you offer a draw to does not have to accept. They are allowed to say no thank you and carried on. Just one thing though, you can't just keep offering a draw after every move. It's just not considered good chess manners. So if you offer a draw and the opponent says no, you shouldn't offer another one for several moves. It's just a manners thing. Some positions are certainly drawn. For instance, if you just if you just end up with two kings on the board, or perhaps king and a bishop versus a king and a knight versus a king, where you just cannot win the game, You'll just dance around all the time, but checkmate's impossible. And you obviously would just stop the game there and call it a draw. Technically, 2 knights and a king should be a draw with best play. The 2 knights can't force checkmate, but they could, if the lone king makes a really silly mistake, create a checkmate in the corner. But there are certain draws, and they're split points. Another example of a draw is what's called threefold repetition. So if the same position occurs in a game 3 times with the same player next to move, then either player can claim a draw at that point. This is why in a tournament you have to write the moves down, because then the tournament director will replay the game to make sure that it has repeated 3 times. But if you forget or you miss that opportunity and play a different move, then that opportunity is gone, unless, of course, the same position reoccurs for a 4th time. And a game is also a draw if at any point there are 50 moves each, so 50 moves for white and black, without either a piece being taken or a pawn being moved. So that is called a draw as well, but only if one of the players notices and makes the claim. So if a piece gets taken on the 52nd move, a player can't go back and say, oh, but 2 moves ago it was a draw. So you have to be ready to do it at the time. If you ever play tournament games, you will find that you can lose a game on time. And most, well, I say most, pretty much all serious games of chess are played with a clock, which allocates a certain amount of thinking time to each player. And after you play a move, you'll press a button, which will start your opponent's clock counting down. And they'll play a move back and they'll press their button, which starts your clock counting down and so on. And what happens is if either player runs out of time, they have lost the game regardless of what's happening on the board. So what happens with junior players, beginners, is frequently, rather than lose on time, they'll play far, far too quickly, but at the same, and make mistakes. And then, so they'll lose the game, but still have ages and ages of time left. Having said that, it's not a good idea to play too slowly, because the opposite can happen. You can end up winning the game, but running out of time. So one of the skills in tournament chess is to get the hang of managing your clock correctly. Few other things. So in serious chess games, you will be expected to write the moves down. You have to do so in tournament play. And it's just if there's an argument, then the tournament director can recreate the game and clear up any arguments. And so if you do ever play in a tournament, you could be forfeited a game if you don't record the moves. That's not to say you'll be in trouble if you make a mistake. If you miss one, you just forget one, you forget one. But you are expected to make an effort to record the moves. But the best bit about this is, of course, you can later on replay your games and learn from your mistakes by looking over the game yourself, or even analysing it with your opponent afterwards. I used to do that in tournaments all the time, a cup of tea in the cafe after the game and go over what's been played and what was each side thinking. A really good way to improve. Or by asking a more experienced player to go through your game for you and make some notes. Or these days you can play through it on a computer and the computer will make suggestions for you. It's a really good idea to write your games down. So I think now from this section, you've got everything you need to complete a legal, completely, totally within the rules game of chess. So now I'll start working on creating some videos to go with the PowerPoints on strategy and tactics. So now that'll help you not just to know the rules, but how to actually start winning more often. Okay, awesome. Good luck with your chess.